The night had settled over the city like a velvet cloak, wrapping everything in a hush that only darkness could bring. Streetlights flickered faintly, casting golden halos on the wet pavement, reflecting the occasional passing car that hummed quietly through the otherwise silent avenues. In the heart of this nocturnal stillness, a small park lay tucked between the tall apartment buildings, its trees swaying gently in the cool midnight breeze. The moon hung low, full and luminous, spilling its silver light across the sprawling lawns, illuminating every blade of grass with a soft, ethereal glow. It was here, beneath the sheltering branches of an old oak, that Elara found herself pacing slowly, her thoughts spinning in restless loops. She had always loved the night, the way it whispered secrets only the heart could hear. The way it allowed emotions to surface without judgment, but tonight, it felt heavier, almost as if it were aware of her longing. Her fingers nervously traced the edge of the scarf she wore, the wool soft and warm against her skin, a small comfort in the cool night air. She remembered the first time she had met Adrian, the way he had smiled at her across the crowded cafe, his eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine amusement, a warmth that seemed impossible to ignore. Tonight, every memory of him played vividly in her mind, like a silent movie projected against the backdrop of the midnight sky, each frame alive with the intensity of moments she had almost forgotten in the chaos of daylight hours. The park seemed deserted, yet she felt a magnetic pull toward the fountain at its center, its waters shimmering under the moonlight like liquid glass. She knew he would be there, waiting, though she hadn't seen him for weeks. The thought of his presence sent a thrill racing through her chest, mingled with a nervous anticipation that made her stomach twist and turn. As she approached the fountain, the soft sound of water splashing against the stone basin became louder, more rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat syncing with her own. And then she saw him, Adrian, leaning casually against the fountain's edge, his dark coat blending with the shadows, yet his figure unmistakable. The world seemed to narrow down to just the two of them, the bustling city outside forgotten, as if midnight itself had paused to witness this moment. He looked up, and in the silver wash of moonlight, his eyes found hers, filled with a depth of emotion that words could never capture. A slow, knowing smile curved across his lips, and she felt her chest tighten, a warmth spreading through her as she stepped closer. Words were unnecessary, the night spoke for them. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind a testament to the connection that had grown quietly, relentlessly, between their hearts. And in that suspended, magical silence, Elara realized that no matter the distance or time that had separated them, this night, this very moment, had been waiting all along to bring them together again. Adrian's hand reached out instinctively, brushing lightly against hers, sending a shiver up her spine that had nothing to do with the chill of the midnight air. The world seemed impossibly still around them, every sound muted except the soft murmur of the fountain and the faint rustling of leaves above. He stepped closer, his presence both grounding and electrifying, filling the space around her with a quiet intensity that made her heart race uncontrollably. She noticed the way the moonlight caught the strands of his hair, giving them a soft, almost celestial glow, and she couldn't help but trace every detail in her mind, the curve of his jaw, the faint shadow of stubble along his chin, the gentle tilt of his head that seemed to ask permission to enter the sacred space of her heart. "I thought you wouldn't come," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the water's gentle hum, but the words carried a tremor of vulnerability she didn't attempt to hide. Adrian smiled again, a slow, tender expression that seemed to dissolve the walls she had carefully constructed over the past few weeks. "I couldn't stay away," he said softly, his voice low and rich, reverberating through her chest like a secret she had longed to hear. For a moment, neither of them spoke, content to let the silence stretch, filled with the unspoken promises and desires that hung heavily in the night air. The cool wind played with the strands of her hair, brushing them across her face, and he reached out, gently tucking them behind her ear, his fingers lingering with a reverence that made her pulse leap. She looked up at him, and their eyes locked in a gaze so intimate it felt like the universe had drawn them together with invisible threads, pulling them into a dance older than time itself. Slowly, deliberately, Adrian took her hand in his, intertwining their fingers as if they had been made to fit together perfectly. Their connection was quiet yet profound, a delicate tension that seemed to thrum in every nerve ending, electrifying the air between them. And as they moved closer, The park around them transformed into a private world, bathed in the silver luminescence of the moon, where only the two of them existed. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch feather-light yet consuming, and she leaned into him instinctively, feeling a warmth that radiated far beyond the physical. "I missed this," she confessed, her voice trembling with honesty, and he pressed his forehead against hers, closing his eyes as if committing the sensation to memory. The intimacy of the moment was almost unbearable, a beautiful ache that neither wanted to resolve, and yet it pulsed with life, compelling them forward. And when Adrian finally leaned in, their lips met softly, a tentative, electric contact that spoke of longing, forgiveness, and the undeniable gravity of love that refuses to be ignored. Time seemed irrelevant, each second stretching into eternity, as they surrendered to the quiet magic of the midnight hour, a love reborn in shadows and moonlight, infinitely fragile yet astonishingly strong. Hours passed, though they remained unaware, lost in a cocoon spun from whispered confessions and gentle caresses, where every heartbeat resonated in harmony with the others. The air grew colder, and a faint fog began to creep across the park, curling around the trunks of trees and swirling like a silken veil over the fountain, yet they remained wrapped in each other's presence, untouched by the world beyond. Adrian's arms encircled her waist, pulling her close as she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, a cadence that mirrored her own inner turbulence finally finding balance. They spoke softly, words tumbling out in hushed tones, revealing thoughts and fears that had been hidden beneath layers of pride and uncertainty. She told him of lonely nights, of moments when she thought he was lost to her forever, and he shared the ache of absence, the countless times he had replayed memories of her smile, the sound of her laughter, the curve of her lips when she was caught between joy and mischief. Every secret shared seemed to deepen the invisible thread connecting them, as though their souls were recognizing one another in a language older than words, a language only love could teach. The night around them became a witness to their vulnerability, to the raw honesty that love demanded in its purest form. Every so often, Adrian would brush a strand of hair from her face, or trace the line of her jaw with gentle fingers, gestures so simple yet laden with an intensity that spoke of a lifetime of unspoken devotion. They laughed softly, recalling shared memories, moments both trivial and monumental, the laughter blending with the ambient murmur of the night until it became a melody only they could hear. Occasionally, a lone owl called from the distance, or the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze punctuated their intimate conversation, reminding them that the world still existed beyond their embrace, yet it mattered so little compared to the gravity of the bond between them. She felt the warmth of his body seep into her, a quiet reassurance that despite everything they had endured, nothing could sever the thread that had drawn them together, a bond forged not just in affection but in understanding, patience, and mutual respect. When she finally tilted her face up to look at him, the mist curling around their silhouettes, the moonlight casting a halo over them, she realized with a clarity that startled her how deep her feelings had grown. This was more than attraction, it was an intertwining of souls, a recognition of a connection that transcended time, distance, and fear. Every glance, every smile, every subtle touch seemed imbued with a gravity that both thrilled and humbled her. She traced the curve of his face with her fingers, memorizing the angles, the contours, as if committing him to memory, and he did the same, letting his fingers linger along the warmth of her skin, holding on to each detail as though it were a treasure he might lose with the coming dawn. And as they stood beneath the ancient oak, the park seemingly holding its breath in reverent silence, Adrian leaned in once more, their lips meeting in a kiss that was no longer tentative but all-consuming, a declaration of love that neither could deny. The kiss deepened, slow and unhurried, tasting of longing, of promises whispered in the spaces between heartbeats, of nights spent yearning and days spent in the ache of absence. In that midnight hour, the world beyond ceased to exist, the city, the noise, the relentless march of time all irrelevant compared to the fragile, luminous bond forming between them. They lingered in each other's embrace, speaking in whispers and sighs, letting the intimacy stretch on without concern for the hour. When they finally pulled back, it was only slightly, enough to rest their foreheads together, breathing in tandem, hearts beating in unison, eyes reflecting a universe of unspoken words. They knew the night would end, that dawn would eventually intrude upon their sanctuary, but for now, in this suspended moment, they had everything: love, connection, and the infinite possibility of a story that had only just begun to be written, one kiss, one touch, and one shared heartbeat at a time. And even as the first tendrils of light began to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, the memory of this night, this intimate cocoon, would linger, a quiet, eternal flame that neither time nor distance could ever extinguish.